On a freezing Montana night, a boy walked through the snow with nothing but a loyal German shepherd at his side. His plea to a Marine would uncover secrets buried deep in the forests and warehouses of Summit Creek.
We'll get through this.
What they found in a hidden basement changed everything. If you believe in courage, loyalty, and second chances like this story, and subscribe for more. Tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Snow fell in slow, stubborn sheets over Ashford Ridge, a Montana town that shrank in winter until the streets looked like long scars of ice and the stoplights blinked to nobody in particular. Jack Hunter parked his faded blue pickup under a flickering lamp outside the VFW hall, cradling a paper cup of black coffee between palms that still remembered sand and diesel and the clatter of rotors. He had been home 3 winters now, and some nights he could almost convince himself the silence was just silence. This was not one of those nights. A shape moved at the edge of the lot, small and purposeful, like a thought that refused to quit. Jack set the coffee on his tailgate and squinted through the veils of snow. The boy came into the cone of light, step by stubborn step, a leash gripped in one hand. On the other end of it, a German shepherd paced with a controlled patience Jack recognized from a lifetime ago. The dog's coat was sable and black. His ears cut the wind like sails, eyes bright and assessing. The boy stopped at the bumper breath, a pale thread in the cold. "Are you Jack Hunter?" he asked, voice thin but steady. "Depends who's asking," Jack said, the line coming out softer than it sounded. Up close, the kid couldn't be more than 10. He wore a thrift store parka with a broken zipper and boots that rode loose at the ankles. His hood shadowed a narrow face pale as a snowfall freckled across the nose. The dog stepped a half stride ahead, placing his body between the boy and the wind, a quiet calculation that made something old click in Jack's chest. The boy swallowed. "My name is Noah Carter," he said. "If you help me, you can have my dog." The words came out clean, rehearsed, like he had burned them into himself on the walk over. Jack waited for a smile that said it was a dare or a game, but the boy's blue eyes didn't blink away. The dog flicked a look at Jack and then back to Noah, as if measuring whether the bargain included him. Jack let out a breath through his nose. "That's a serious offer." "I'm serious," Noah said. His knuckles tightened on the leash, the skin raw and reddened. "He's smart. He does what he's told. He understands. His name is Ranger." At the word, the dog's ears tipped and his tail gave a single measured sweep, nothing wasted. Jack nodded once at the dog. "Yeah, he looks it." He knocked snow off the tailgate and sat. "You don't give away a partner unless you think you've got no other cards. So tell me why you think I'm the one to make a deal with." Noah took a breath that shivered in the cold. "Because you're a Marine." Jack didn't ask how he knew. Folks talked. Pictures at the VFW, the way a man carried himself when he wanted to be a wall. Jack took in the kid the way he had been trained to read a perimeter edges first, then the middle. The boots were cheap rubber meant for puddles, not mountain winter. The tongues flared at the top. He looked closer. The gaps around the boy's ankles were stuffed with cloth rags, maybe a t-shirt torn into strips to keep out the cold where the boots were 2 sizes too big. Jack felt the hair lift along his arms beneath his coat. That wasn't poverty alone. That was flight. "Where'd you come from, Noah?" he asked. "Town line?" Noah said, glancing past the lot toward the dark ribbon of highway as if it might rethink itself and bring trouble back around. His voice got even softer. "I had to take the back road." The dog shifted and leaned lightly into the boy's hip the way dogs do when they love someone small and tired. Jack's gaze went to the boy's hands again. The nails were dirty along the beds the way they get when you pack snow and fight doors with bad locks. There were thin old scars along the first knuckles, not the clumsy scrapes of a playground, more precise. Jack stood and his boots popped against the ice. "Okay," he said. "I'm listening. But I don't take dogs as payment. That's not how this works." Noah nodded too quickly, as if he'd expected the answer and was relieved to have it said out loud. He looked over his shoulder again, a quick, bird-like scan of darkness measuring distance and time. "I didn't know where else to go," he said. His voice sharpened with a resolve too big for his frame. "I can work. I can do dishes, Sweep, but I need you to help me get my dad." The last words tumbled like stones that had been in his mouth too long. The dog lifted his head at Dad, then settled. Jack felt the town's quiet pull tighter around them. Snow ticked on the hood of his truck like tiny fingernails. Somewhere down Main, a plow groaned and threw sparks. He thought of the few calls he still took for neighbors who trusted his steadiness more than their own, the nights he'd driven folks to the clinic because the roads ate sedans alive. He thought of a dog he'd known by another name in another country, and the way absence can fill a man's chest until breathing feels like lifting sandbags. "What's your father's name?" Jack asked. Noah's lips trembled once and then steadied. "Michael Carter." He said it with careful respect, as if speaking in a church. "People say he's gone. They're wrong." Jack let the name set. Carter. Common, but in a small town, common names carried particular echoes. He replayed the businesses that came through the VFW for donations, the flyers on the grocery store corkboard that never got taken down. He felt the tug of something familiar but not yet visible, like a shape under ice. "And your mother?" Jack asked. Noah's gaze lowered for the first time. Ranger pressed closer a living weight that looked like courage to borrow. "She's not here," Noah said. Those 3 words carried a winter all their own. Jack didn't chase them. He knew the way grief locked its doors. The boy would circle back when he could. The Marine in him took stock again. The boy was on the edge of a shake, but he was holding, and not because of Jack, because of the dog. Jack crouched palm down and open, letting Ranger decide if the conversation went to the ground level. The shepherd sniffed patiently thorough, then touched Jack's glove with his nose, a professional acknowledgement. Ranger Jack murmured, "You take care of him." The dog's gaze cut to Noah and back. It was answer enough. Jack straightened. "All right. Noah, I'm going to ask you some direct questions. If I get too close, you tell me to back off. Can you do that?" Noah nodded. "Yeah. Is someone looking for you right now?" Another nod, smaller. "Does that someone have a car?" A whisper. "Yes." "Would that someone come here?" The boy's eyes flicked toward the road again. "Not if he thinks I'm too scared to come to a place with cameras." Jack let the calculation sink in. The kid wasn't just desperate. He was thinking in angles. In the corner of his vision, the VFW camera above the door held its red eye steady, insisting the lens was alive. Jack thought about the half-mile down to Ben Walker's diner, where the coffee was steady and the back booth faced the mirror behind the counter. He thought about the alley that ran behind it, a shortcut in and out if a quick exit was needed. He thought about how long it would take to circle to the clinic if that became necessary. Logistics were muscle memory. "I can get you warm," Jack said, pitching his voice low and even the way you talk to a horse with a nail in its hoof. "I can get you fed, and I can listen, but I won't take your dog and I won't make promises I can't keep. You understand me?" Noah lifted his chin. "Yes, sir." The sir wasn't habit. It was a plea wrapped in respect. Jack reached for the tailgate coffee, then thought better of it and tossed it a cold arc into the snow. "Truck's warm," he said. "Ranger rides up front. You take the middle." Noah hesitated, not at the invitation, but at the act of moving, as if the simple shift from one patch of snow to another might alert whatever shadow was tracking him. Ranger solved it by stepping first one paw onto the truck's running board, then the other, then up and in, as if this had been the plan all along. Noah exhaled and followed, settling between dog and Marine like a bookmark in a story that didn't know its ending yet. Jack slid behind the wheel, keyed the ignition, and let the heater roar to life. The windshield fogged and then cleared, revealing Main Street glazed in ice and tucked in under winter's low sky. Jack kept the lights dim and pulled onto the road tires, chewing carefully. "You said your father's not gone," he said. "What makes you sure Noah's fingers traced the nylon weave of Ranger's leash, a rhythm that slowed his breathing?" "He told me he'd come back," Noah said. "And Ranger still waits at the door at night. He only does that when someone he knows is near. He did it last week, 3 nights in a row." Ranger leaned his head into Noah's shoulder like he had been listening the whole time and approved of the telling. Jack watched the boy's profile against the passing ghost of storefronts, the way the dog's presence built a small shelter inside the cab. "Dogs do know things," Jack said. He thought of patrol nights when a canine's posture had saved seconds, and seconds had been all the difference. The road curved past the library and the shuttered hardware store. The diner's neon open sign buzzed blue against the white world. Jack eased into the lot and cut the engine, letting quiet fill the space where their breath hung in a shared cloud. He turned not all the way, just enough to put weight in the words. "Inside you sit with your back to the wall, eyes on the door. If anyone you know walks in, you tell me before you tell yourself you're scared. Deal." Noah swallowed. "Deal." He reached for the handle and paused. "Mr. Hunter, Jack's fine. If you'd said yes about Ranger," Noah whispered, "I would have given him to you. But I'm glad you didn't." Jack met the boy's gaze and let a small, steady smile find his mouth. "Me too," he said. He opened his door and the cold rushed in clean and relentless. Ranger hopped down, first landed light, and did a quick, efficient scan of the lot, a circle, a sniff of air currents, a look under the front bumper of a parked sedan before falling into step at Noah's knee. Jack watched the dog's economy and felt the world tilt a degree toward order. The bell over the diner door would ring. The coffee would be hot. There would be a table by the mirror. Questions could be asked with a plate between them to slow the answers enough to hear what wasn't spoken. Out beyond the neon, the night drew a long breath as if deciding whether to bring the storm closer or let it ease. Jack touched the brim of his cap against the cold and guided the boy and his dog toward the light. The bell above Walker's Diner gave a tired jingle as Jack Hunter pushed the glass door open and guided Noah and Ranger inside. The heat rushed to meet them, carrying with it the smells of frying bacon and brewed coffee. The neon light faded against the wood-paneled walls where photographs of local fishing contests and Little League teams had yellowed in their frames. A waitress in her 40s with a ponytail and a denim shirt glanced up from behind the counter, gave a nod of recognition to Jack, then let her eyes rest for a moment on Noah's pale face and the German shepherd close to his side. Without a word, she set 3 mugs on the counter and poured them each half full before sliding 2 toward the back booth. Jack guided Noah to the farthest table, one where the mirror on the wall gave a view of both the front door and the kitchen entrance. Ranger hopped onto the floor between them, front paws out, head upright, eyes scanning the angles of the room as if he were trained to do it. Noah kept one hand on the dog's collar, his fingers tapping against the brass tag as if counting heartbeats. Jack slid into the booth opposite him, unzipped his coat halfway, and studied the boy's eyes across the laminated menu neither of them planned to open. For a few moments they sat in silence except for the scrape of forks on plates and the murmur of late-night customers. The diner was half full. 2 truckers leaned over pie at the counter, a young couple shared fries at the front booth, and in the far corner a man sat alone with a paper folded flat in front of him. His coat was still buttoned as if he had not planned to stay long. His hat pulled low so the fluorescent light made his jawline disappear into shadow. Jack noted him but kept his focus on Noah, who stared at his water glass with an intensity too sharp for his age. Ranger's ears tilted slightly toward the corner, then flattened, but the dog did not growl yet. Jack leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You said your father isn't gone?" Jack said quietly. You said Ranger waits at the door. That's not nothing. But I need to know what made you walk through snow tonight to find me instead of anyone else. Noah's gaze lifted for a second, then dropped. His right hand moved toward the napkin holder, hesitated, and instead slid under the salt shaker. When Jack blinked, Noah pushed a folded scrap of paper across the table with his fingertips. Jack unfolded it beneath the menu so no one else could see. The pencil lines were uneven but clear. He's watching us. Jack didn't react outwardly. He had learned long ago that fear spread faster than fire if you gave it wind. He folded the note once more, tucked it into his jacket pocket, and took a sip of coffee. All right, he said, voice calm. We'll talk slower. Noah's throat bobbed. Ranger shifted his weight, his paws stiffening. This time a low sound rumbled from his chest, not loud but steady, pointed in one direction. Jack followed the dog's gaze to the man in the corner. The stranger's eyes were hidden behind the brim of his hat, but his posture was wrong for a late-night meal. He wasn't reading the paper in front of him. He was waiting for something. Jack watched the man's hand drum once against the edge of the table, then still. The waitress passed by with plates of eggs for another booth, and when she did, the man in the corner folded his paper with deliberate neatness, slid a few bills beneath the salt, and rose. Ranger's growl deepened. Noah grabbed his collar quickly, whispering easy, though his voice shook. The man walked past without glancing at them, but Jack caught the way his boots angled toward the door too quickly, as if rehearsed. The bell jingled, the door opened, the cold spilled in, and then he was gone. Jack waited until the sound of tires crunching snow outside faded. Then he leaned across the table. Noah, he said. Tell me who that was. The boy shook his head quickly, eyes wet. I can't. If I say his name, he'll know. Jack studied him. You think he has ears everywhere? Noah bit his lip and nodded. Jack pressed his palm flat on the table. Then we'll give him nothing to hear tonight. You're safe here as long as you're sitting across from me and Rangers on the floor. The boy exhaled slowly, shoulders loosening just a fraction. Ranger placed his chin on Noah's knee, anchoring him to the booth. The waitress returned, balancing 2 plates of grilled cheese and fries. On the house, Jack, she said softly. Kid looks like he could use it. She glanced again at Noah, who managed a small nod of thanks. When she walked away, Jack watched her retreat, then turned back. That man in the corner, he followed you here. Noah hesitated. He follows everywhere, he whispered. Sometimes he stays across the street in a car, sometimes at the end of the block. But tonight he came inside. He wanted to see if I'd talk. Jack let the words settle like snow on a roof. And you wrote the note because you didn't trust even whispering it. Noah's jaw tightened. If I talk, he'll find me faster. Jack took another sip of coffee, mind already running in quiet loops, car parked outside, headlights off, probably not alone. The diner had only 2 exits, one front and one through the kitchen. If Noah was right, the man would circle back. Jack leaned back, shoulders against the booth, giving the impression of relaxation, while his eyes tracked the street through the window reflection. You did right, Noah, he said, writing it down instead of saying it. That takes sense. Noah's lips quirked faintly, the ghost of pride. Ranger's tail thumped once against the floor. Jack let the moment breathe. Then he asked, This man. He works for the one you're running from? Noah's eyes went glassy, but he nodded once sharply. Yes. Jack reached across and took a fry from his plate, chewing slow to buy thought. Okay, he said finally. Then tonight we keep it simple. You eat, you get warm, and Ranger keeps the watch. Tomorrow we move. Noah's eyes widened, where Jack lowered his voice, somewhere with locks stronger than a diner door. Ranger's ears pricked toward the window again. Jack followed his line of sight. Out across the lot, a sedan sat beneath the streetlight engine off a thin frost already glazing the windshield. No driver visible. Jack's instincts hummed the way they had before a patrol turned hot. He pulled the coffee closer, let his other hand rest casually near his coat pocket where a pocket knife sat folded. He would not spook the boy with talk of fights not yet here. But he would be ready. The minutes stretched, plates cooled. Noah picked at the bread with small fingers. Ranger's gaze never left the window, his breath fogging the glass when he shifted closer. Finally, Jack stood. "Time to go," he said. Noah startled. Now Jack nodded. "We leave while he thinks you're still afraid to?" He slid cash under the plate, thanked the waitress with a nod, and led the way toward the door. The bell gave another tired jingle. The cold met them head-on. Ranger leapt down the steps, body taut scanning. The sedan's windshield fogged for a second, as if someone inside exhaled. Jack rested a hand briefly on the boy's shoulder. "Walk steady. Don't look back." Noah obeyed, clutching Ranger's leash like a rope across water. They crossed the lot, climbed into the truck, and Jack turned the ignition without hesitation. The engine roared, the heater groaned, and the headlights carved two bright paths across the snow. In the rearview mirror, the sedan stayed still, but Jack knew the game was only beginning. Jack Hunter drove the truck out of the diner lot and onto the county road where the snow fell heavier, the headlights cutting through a pale curtain that refused to end. Noah Carter sat in the middle seat, shoulders pressed against Ranger's thick fur, the boy's hand gripping the leash with a rhythm that betrayed nerves he did not want to show. Jack kept his eyes on the road, but noted every twitch from the boy, every sudden turn of Ranger's ears, every shift in the shadows on either side of the highway. After 10 miles, he steered off onto a gravel lane lined with pine, the truck's tires crunching over ice until he reached a cabin he sometimes used during hunting season. It was not much, just 2 rooms and a wood stove, but it was private, and privacy tonight was worth more than heat. He parked beneath the overhang, killed the engine, and the sudden silence pressed against the glass like a second skin. Noah followed Ranger out of the cab, his small boots sinking in the drift. Jack unlocked the door and waved them in shaking snow from his coat. Inside, the air was stale with old firewood, but a few minutes with the stove would change that. He lit the flame, fed the fire, and let the warmth creep into the shadows. Noah sat on the couch, Ranger curling at his feet, both of them watching Jack as if waiting for judgment. Jack studied the boy in the new light. The parka was too large, the zipper broken, but what caught his eye was when Noah tugged at the sleeve and the fabric slipped from his shoulder. Beneath the sweater was skin marred by thin ridges, pale scars against paler flesh. Jack recognized them instantly, not as accidents from play, but deliberate marks, straight and cruel. His chest tightened, though his face gave nothing away. He had seen scars like that overseas on men who carried burdens no one else could measure, and to see them on a child was a different kind of wound. How long, Jack asked, voice even not to frighten him. Noah blinked, then pulled the sleeve back up quickly. "They don't matter," he whispered. Jack crouched so his eyes were level with the boy's. "They matter enough for you to hide them," he said. Noah's lips pressed together, and his gaze dropped to Ranger, who nudged his knee with a wet nose. The boy finally said, "Since last year." He did not say by whom, but Jack did not need the name. He already suspected the shadow Noah ran from had left more than fear behind. Jack stood slowly, gave the fire another log, and thought of how best to steady a child without crowding him. As he turned, Ranger padded over to Jack's duffel bag by the chair. The dog sniffed once, twice, then pawed at the zipper until it slid open. Jack frowned. "Leave it," he said automatically, but Ranger ignored him and pulled out a folded envelope wedged deep inside. Jack hadn't placed anything like that in his bag. He crouched and opened it, revealing a photograph inside. The edges were worn, the surface smudged, but the image was clear. A man in marine dress blues stood rigid against a plain backdrop, the name tag visible Michael Carter. Below it, in bold black ink, stamped by a government file, the words read, "Missing, presumed dead." Jack held the photo, then turned his gaze to Noah. The boy's face had gone pale, his hand tightening on Ranger's leash as if bracing for a reaction. "You put this in my bag," Jack said quietly. Noah nodded once, eyes bright with a mixture of fear and defiance. "I didn't know if you would listen if I just told you," he admitted. "But if you saw him, if you saw his uniform, you'd understand." Jack felt the weight of the picture, not just the paper, but the echo of what it represented. A fellow Marine gone labeled as another statistic and a child who believed the story was not finished. "Where did you get this?" Jack asked. Noah licked his lips, hesitated, then answered. "It was in Mom's drawer. She said never to show anyone, but after she was gone, Victor." He stopped himself, eyes darting to the door as if the name might conjure a shadow. Ranger pressed close, tail stiff. Jack softened his tone. "Victor Hale." The boy flinched but nodded. Jack folded the photo and slipped it into his own breast pocket. "All right," he said. "Now I've seen him. That means I have a reason to ask the questions that need asking." Noah's shoulders slumped, some of the tension leaving his frame. Jack pulled a chair closer, sat down and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Tell me about your father," he said. Noah's voice came hesitant at first, then steadier as if speaking brought warmth back to him. "He used to drive trucks. Not just any trucks, big ones, long routes. He said it was steady work, better than construction. But then he stopped coming home. People said he had an accident. The paper said he was dead. But Mom never believed it. She kept this picture like proof." His small hands gripped the edge of the couch cushion. "And I know he's alive. I can feel it." Jack listened carefully, watching how the boy's body leaned into Ranger with each word drawing courage from the dog's calm presence. He thought about the way Ranger had found the photo, as if some part of the animal understood when secrets needed to come to light. Jack's own instincts whispered that this was no coincidence. The boy's father was more than a lost name on a government list. His disappearance was tied to the shadows that now pressed against Noah's every step. Jack reached for his thermos, poured hot water into a chipped mug, and slid it across to Noah. "Drink. It'll help." The boy wrapped both hands around it, grateful for the heat. Jack kept his eyes steady on him. "If your father was alive, if he was being kept somewhere who would know," Noah's voice dropped. "Victor." The single word hung heavy in the cabin. Jack's mind turned gears quietly. Victor Hale, a name he had heard around the county, a man with money but no clear trade, a man who showed up at charity auctions and walked away with silence. Now that name carried the weight of bruises on a boy's shoulder and a photograph of a Marine erased by ink. Jack felt the old training sharpen inside him. He leaned back, tapped the photo pocket once with 2 fingers, and spoke carefully. "You've done the hard part, Noah. You showed me what you had. That means I can't walk away now." Noah's eyes widened, hope flashing like a spark in the dark. Ranger thumped his tail once against the floor, a quiet agreement. Outside, the wind rose, rattling the pine branches against the roof, but inside the cabin, the fire glowed steady. Jack stood and pulled the curtain aside, scanning the yard for headlights. None yet. He turned back. "Tomorrow we start asking questions. Not the kind that get printed in papers, but the kind that get answers." Noah nodded slowly, his hand never leaving Ranger's fur. Jack knew then that the night had shifted. What began as a plea for help had become a mission. The following night, Jack Hunter decided it was too dangerous to stay another hour in the cabin. The fire had kept them warm, and the 4 walls had given Noah a brief sense of safety, but Jack knew places like that were easily found once someone started asking around. He packed his duffel, checked his rifle case, though he did not bring it inside, and ushered Noah and Ranger back to the truck. The boy looked reluctant to leave the glow of the wood stove, but Jack put a firm hand on his shoulder and said, "We need a roof where they won't expect us." They drove until they reached the edge of town, where an aging roadside motel stood beneath a buzzing sign that read, "Vacancy" in red neon. The parking lot was half-frozen slush, the siding weathered, but it was anonymous, and anonymity was what mattered. Jack parked at the far corner, paid for a single room in cash, and led Noah and Ranger up the narrow stairwell. The hallway smelled faintly of bleach and smoke. Inside the room there was a double bed, a nightstand with a cracked lamp, and curtains heavy enough to block the light. Jack secured the lock and told Noah to sit while he checked the perimeter. Ranger paced the carpet nose, brushing along the walls, tail stiff. The boy pulled his coat tighter and looked toward the door. Jack crouched, checked under the bed, and drew the curtain an inch to see the lot. No one in sight but a lone sedan 2 spaces down, windshield fogged from cold. He filed that image away. "Get some rest," Jack said quietly. "I'll stay awake a while." Noah lay back on the bed without removing his coat, one hand resting on Ranger's back. The dog curled against him, both sets of eyes tracking every sound in the hallway. It was past midnight when it began. First a creak of floorboards from above, then the faint shuffle of shoes outside. Jack's hand went automatically to the pocket knife at his belt. He rose silently and stood near the door listening. The sound grew clearer. A heavy knock not at their room, but at the door directly across the hall. The knock was measured too loud for courtesy, too soft for casual. Jack's instincts sharpened. He signaled Noah to stay silent, one finger to his lips. Ranger rose, muscles taut, ears pinned forward, his gaze locked on the door. The knock repeated, then a pause, then again sharper. A voice murmured low, but not enough to make out the words. Jack didn't move to open. Instead, he leaned near the peephole, but looked only briefly. The opposite door stood closed, and a figure loomed just outside it, his shoulders filling the frame. After a moment, silence returned. Then footsteps retreated down the hall. Jack waited until the sound faded entirely before stepping back. Noah whispered, "Was it him?" Jack shook his head. "Not yet. But someone knows we're here." The boy swallowed hard, clutching Ranger's collar. Jack turned to the window again, watching the lot. The sedan was still there, but now the frost on its windshield had cleared in patches, a sign of warmth inside. Someone was sitting there waiting. Jack made a decision. They could not linger, not until dawn, not with eyes at their door. He began packing his duffel again. "We're leaving," he said. Noah stood quickly, fear flickering across his face, where Jack zipped the bag. "Somewhere they won't expect twice." Ranger gave a sharp bark, then startling them both. The dog lunged toward the door, then turned back to Jack, whining, pawing insistently at the corner near the wall. Jack frowned, followed the dog, and bent down. Ranger darted back toward the window, whining again. Something was wrong outside. Jack eased the curtain aside, scanned the lot. Nothing moved. He turned to the truck parked under the light snow piled against its tires. Ranger barked once more, urgent. Jack's eyes narrowed. He slipped his jacket on and opened the door cautiously. "Stay here," he told Noah. The boy shook his head violently. "Don't go." Jack softened his tone. "Just the lot. Bolt the door until I knock twice." Ranger squeezed past him despite the command and padded down the metal stairs, nose to the ground. Jack followed, boots crunching on thin ice. The lot was still, but Ranger pulled hard toward the truck. Jack circled to the driver's side, flashlight low in his hand. He crouched and scanned beneath the chassis. That was when he saw it. The brake lines cut nearly through, hanging loose where they should have been taut. The slice was clean, deliberate, not the work of time or accident. Jack exhaled once through his nose, rose and scanned the shadows. Someone had been under his truck within the last hour, waiting for him to drive, waiting for gravity and speed to finish the job. He felt the old tightness in his chest, the one that had kept him alive in foreign alleys, the one that told him this was not chance. He reached down and pressed Ranger's collar. "Good boy," he whispered. Jack climbed the stairs back 2 at a time, knocked twice. Noah unlocked the door and let him in, eyes wide. What Jack set the duffel down and spoke quietly but firm. They cut the brakes. "We don't drive tonight." Noah's lips parted in shock. "Then, what do we do?" Jack pulled the curtain shut, turned off the lamp, and let the room fall into half-darkness. "We wait," he said, "and we watch." Ranger lay at the foot of the bed, ears pricked, eyes on the door. Jack sat in the chair facing the window, every muscle alert. Outside, the sedan's headlights flicked on for a brief second, then off again like a signal. Jack didn't move. The game had shifted, and patience was now his best weapon. He looked at Noah, who had pulled the blanket up to his chin, the boy's eyes still open, reflecting fear and trust both. Jack said quietly, "Your father would have wanted me to keep you safe. That means I don't take chances with broken lines and strangers at doors." Noah clutched Ranger tighter. The dog gave a soft whine, then lay still, body tense. Jack kept his gaze on the window, waiting for the first sign of dawn or danger, whichever came first. He knew now they were not just being followed. They were being hunted, and the hunters were closing in. The motel room remained dark long after the sky outside had shifted from black to gray. Jack Hunter kept his seat by the window eyes, alert for any sign of movement in the lot, while Noah slept lightly with Ranger curled at his side. By dawn, the sedan was gone, leaving behind only tire tracks that froze hard into the slush. Jack knew they had a narrow window to move before another watcher replaced the first. He waited until Noah stirred, rubbed his eyes, and whispered, "Is it morning?" Jack nodded once. "Morning enough. Time to work." He guided the boy to wash up, checked Ranger's paws for cuts from the ice, and gathered his bag. Instead of heading to the truck with the cut brake line, Jack led them on foot down the service alley behind the motel, staying low until they reached a hardware store 2 blocks away. He purchased a simple burner phone cash only and led them further into town, where the library stood beneath tall stone columns. The library was quiet at that early hour, the air thick with the scent of dust and ink. He chose a corner computer, slid the screen so no one could glance over his shoulder, and began typing. Noah sat across from him with Ranger at his feet, whispering questions the boy could not keep inside. "What are you looking for?" Jack answered softly without turning his gaze from the monitor. "Your father's trail. Paper doesn't lie the way men do." Jack pulled up the military personnel archive, keyed in Michael Carter. The records blinked into place slowly, as if reluctant to be revealed. Noah leaned forward, eyes wide, reading what little he could. The file showed Michael Carter enlisted in the Marine Corps at 20, served 8 years honorably discharged, last unit, listed as logistics support men who kept supplies moving in silence. Afterward, he had taken a civilian contract with a regional freight company, North Continental Transport. Jack clicked further, finding that the contract ended abruptly 3 years ago. Status missing, presumed deceased. Jack's jaw tightened, the echo of the stamped words from the photograph now confirmed by digital ink. Noah whispered, "That's not true. He isn't dead." Jack glanced at him and said evenly, "Files tell one story. You and Ranger tell another. I believe yours." He scrolled deeper. The freight company's management roster popped up, the faded photographs of executives attached to the names. Jack froze when one familiar name surfaced, Victor Hale. He clicked the profile. Hale listed as operations manager, overseeing long-haul routes in and out of Montana. Employment overlapped exactly with Michael Carter's last contract year. Jack leaned back, slowly, mind turning. The boy's stepfather had both proximity and authority to erase a man who might have known too much. He looked at Noah, whose fingers clutched the table edge. What the boy whispered, Jack slid the screen slightly. Your stepfather worked at the same company as your father. Same year. Same roads. Noah's face went pale. Then he knew him. Jack nodded. He more than knew him. He had control over him. Ranger gave a low growl under the table, his eyes fixed on the door as if even the mention of Hale's name stirred unease. Jack reached down and touched the dog's head briefly. He turned back to the computer and searched the company's public filings, noting Shell Corporation's addresses scattered across rural counties, warehouses listed under different names. Too many coincidences pointed to the kind of structure Jack had seen before overseas fronts for operations that avoided questions. He printed a handful of pages, folded them into his jacket. Noah asked quietly, "Does this mean my dad? He was taken." Jack looked directly at him. "It means your father was in the wrong place under the wrong boss, and that boss had a reason to make him disappear." As they left the library, Jack scanned the street. The sun had climbed, but the air stayed brittle cold snow piled high against storefronts. He guided Noah and Ranger toward a diner 2 blocks away, not Ben Walker's this time, but a different one less familiar where they could sit unnoticed. In the booth, Jack spread the papers, carefully tracing lines with his finger. "Hale had opportunity," he said, voice low, "and if your father stumbled onto something in those freight routes that gave him motive." Noah's brow furrowed. "Like what?" Jack shook his head slowly. "I don't know yet. But men don't erase other men unless they're hiding something bigger than one paycheck." Ranger's tail tapped once against the seat as if echoing the thought. Noah leaned forward. "So what do we do now?" Jack folded the papers and tucked them away. "We dig deeper. Every company leaves a footprint, no matter how hard they try to cover it. And someone out there knows what happened on those roads." He placed cash on the table and rose. "But we move carefully. Hale has eyes, and cutting my brakes tells me he's not afraid to use them." They stepped back into the cold Ranger alert at Noah's side. Jack guided them toward the truck, though he knew they could not drive it yet, not without repairs. For now, it was enough to have a direction, a line pointing from Michael Carter's last uniform to Victor Hale's hidden operations. Jack paused by the sidewalk, scanning the street before crossing. He felt the weight of the photo in his pocket, and the weight of the boy's trust heavier still. The trail had begun to clear, and with it came new danger. He looked down at Ranger, who met his eyes steady and unblinking. "All right, partner," Jack murmured. "We follow this road wherever it leads." Jack Hunter knew the paper trail he pulled from the library was not enough. Names on a screen could be denied records, could be rewritten, and men like Victor Hale survived because they controlled what other people never saw. What he needed was proof hidden outside of official files, something that bled through the cracks of silence. That afternoon, he led Noah and Ranger through side streets until they reached a small medical clinic at the edge of town. The brick building was modest, its painted sign chipped, but Jack remembered the nurse who worked there. Anna Collins had once patched him up after a hunting accident and had spoken with the kind of honesty that made him trust her. He guided Noah inside the boy's hood, pulled low, Ranger staying close at his side. The waiting room was empty except for a receptionist behind glass. Jack asked for Anna, giving only his name. Within minutes, Anna appeared, her scrubs hidden beneath a winter coat, her dark hair tied back. She looked from Jack to the boy, then to the dog, and her expression softened but grew serious at once. "Follow me," she said quietly. She led them through a side hallway into a small supply room. When the door shut, the noise of the clinic faded. Anna leaned against a shelf, arms crossed. "I heard you were back in town," she said, "and I heard you've been asking questions." Jack nodded. "Questions about Victor Hale, about missing children, about Noah's father." Her eyes flicked to the boy who stayed close to Ranger, then back to Jack. "You're stirring waters people want calm," Jack replied. Calm waters drown the fastest. Anna exhaled sharply, then reached into her bag. She produced a slim manila folder bound with a red tag. I'm not supposed to have this. It was sealed after review, but I kept a copy. She placed it in his hands. Jack opened it, flipping through the pages quickly. Photographs of bruised children, medical notes of broken bones, head injuries, all described as accidents, all signed off without further inquiry. But the patterns were clear. The same locations, the same trucking routes listed in parent addresses, the same names reappearing. Jack's grip tightened. How long, he asked. Anna shook her head. Too long. Every time I flagged one, it vanished. The county closed the case or the parents moved. It never made sense. Until I saw who signed the transport records. Jack looked up. Hale? She nodded. Yes, I knew you'd understand. Noah's eyes grew round as he peeked at the pages. These kids. Like me? He asked softly. Jack closed the folder quickly. Like you, he confirmed, but we're not going to let it keep happening. He slipped the folder into his jacket. Thank you, Anna. You just gave me something they can't erase. Anna gripped his arm. Be careful, Jack. Men like Hale don't just silence kids. They silence anyone who talks too much. He nodded once. Then we'll talk louder. By dusk, Jack, Noah, and Ranger checked into another safe room, this time an older boarding house owned by a retired sheriff who owed Jack favors. The wood creaked under their boots. The heat came from an iron radiator, but the locks were solid. They ate canned soup quietly, Ranger lying on the rug in front of the bed, ears flicking at each sound. Jack reviewed the folder again, memorizing the names, committing the photographs to memory. Noah sat cross-legged watching him. Does this mean Dad found out too? He asked. Jack closed the folder. It's possible. If he saw what Hale was doing, it would explain why they wanted him gone. The boy nodded slowly, face pale. Ranger shifted, suddenly rising to his paws, his ears tilted forward, nose pressed to the floor near the nightstand. Jack looked up. What is it, boy? Ranger scratched once, then began pawing at the wooden boards with urgency. Jack rose quickly, flashlight in hand. The dog pressed hard nails, clicking until the edge of a board loosened. Jack crouched, pried it back, and froze. Beneath the floor was a small black lens wires trailing into the shadows. A hidden camera carefully placed, aimed at the bed. Jack pulled it free, the red recording light still blinking faintly. His jaw set like stone. They've been watching us, he murmured. Noah's face drained of color. Even here, Jack showed him the device. Everywhere. He snapped the wires and tossed it into his duffel. Ranger whined low as if sensing the weight of betrayal. Jack scanned the room again this time with a soldier's precision, checking vents, corners, the bathroom. He found no second device, but knew one was enough to confirm his fear. Hale's network had eyes everywhere, even among allies. Jack turned to Noah. Listen carefully. This means we don't whisper secrets anymore. We don't talk at all unless it's face-to-face. No notes, no calls. We move as if we're already being followed. Noah nodded quickly, clutching Ranger's fur. Jack's mind churned. The folder gave them proof, but the camera meant their proof might already be compromised. He had to decide who was ally and who was enemy, and tonight proved the line between them was razor thin. He doused the lamp, leaving the glow of the radiator the only light. He pulled his chair close to the door blade in pocket, eyes open. Ranger lay across the threshold, the dog's body the first barrier against whoever might come next. Noah curled beneath the blanket, still awake, whispering to Ranger. Jack whispered to himself, not for prayer, but for focus. One step at a time. Outside, the wind carried faint noises of tires crunching on gravel, then silence again. Jack kept watch, knowing dawn would bring the next move, whether theirs or Hale's. The morning after Ranger unearthed the hidden camera, Jack Hunter knew they could not linger another day inside four walls. The folder from Anna Collins and the surveillance device pointed in the same direction. Hale's network reached deeper than he had guessed, and waiting would only tighten the noose. While Noah ate a small breakfast of bread and canned fruit, Jack unfolded a county map across the nightstand and asked him to think carefully. "You told me once about a place in the woods," Jack said. "Something red. Do you remember it?" Noah frowned, pressing fingers to his temple. "Yes. When Victor drove me out past the river, he always slowed near an old farm road. I saw a red building once through the trees. He told me never to ask about it. He called it just a shed." Jack circled the area on the map. "Then that's where we start." They left before sunrise, taking back roads in a borrowed pickup from the boarding house owner, its brakes intact. The forest pressed close as they climbed into the hills, snow still heavy along the shoulders. Noah sat in the middle again, Ranger's head resting across his lap, the boy whispering directions from memory. After an hour, Noah pointed left toward a rutted path nearly hidden beneath pine branches. Jack turned the wheel, the truck bumping and lurching until a clearing opened. There it was, a small farmstead, long abandoned, a crooked barn painted once in bright red, but now dulled by weather into rust. Fences, sagged windows were boarded, and smoke had not risen from the chimney in years. Still, the shape of the place matched Noah's memory exactly. Jack parked beneath the tree line, cut the engine, and scanned the area with binoculars. Nothing moved, no footprints in the snow, but deer tracks. "Looks empty," Jack murmured. Noah hugged Ranger closer. "It never is," he whispered. Jack led them forward on foot boots, crunching softly, rifle slung, though he kept it lowered. They crossed the yard, the barn looming like a silent witness. Jack pushed the side door open. Hinges groaned and the smell of rot and hay spilled out. Inside, dust-coated broken tools, cobwebs hung from beams, and the floor was scattered with animal droppings. It looked forgotten, but Jack's instincts warned that appearances lied. He walked the perimeter, tapping Beam's eyes, searching for signs of use. Noah trailed behind, holding Ranger's leash, though the dog pulled ahead, nose busy, tail stiff. Near the woodpile, stacked against the outer wall, Ranger stopped. His body stiffened. Then he began to paw hard at the frozen ground. "What is it, boy?" Jack crouched, brushing away snow. Ranger dug faster, claws scraping dirt until a metallic sound rang out. Jack scraped with his knife, revealing the edge of a rusted tin box buried shallow. With effort, he pried it free. The box was dented, its hinges stubborn, but he forced it open. Inside lay a stack of envelopes, weathered but intact, each containing documents. Jack flipped through them quickly and felt his chest tighten. Driver's licenses, social security cards, folded pay stubs, all belonging to different names. Some matched the list Anna had shown him, others were new. Every face stared back like a missing voice calling from the ground. Noah leaned over, eyes wide. "These are people," Jack nodded grimly. "People who didn't walk away. People Hale wanted erased." He spread a few across the woodpile. One license bore the face of a young man reported missing from a nearby town. Another belonged to a mother whose child had been placed in foster care after she vanished. The pay stubs linked back to North Continental Transport, the company Hale once managed. Jack folded the stack carefully, sliding them into his jacket. "This is the kind of proof that breathes louder than whispers," he said. Noah whispered, "It means Dad's name could be in another box." Jack met his gaze. "And that means he's not just a ghost story." Ranger gave a short bark, as if in agreement, paws still digging near the edge of the pile. Jack checked, but found nothing further. Still, the dog had led them to what mattered most. They spent another hour combing the barn, finding only scraps of rope, broken crates, and rusting nails. Yet the silence felt staged, as if someone had cleared the place years ago, knowing one day eyes might return. Jack memorized every angle, every path, every weak spot in the walls. He led them back outside the winter sun, dipping low. Noah shivered, his breath sharp in the cold. "What if they know we found this?" he asked. Jack scanned the tree line. "They'll know soon enough, and when they do, they'll come." He guided the boy back to the truck, Ranger trotting ahead, tail stiff but steady. As they drove away, Jack could not shake the feeling of eyes on the back of his neck. The documents proved Hale's reach, but they also painted a target larger than before. He glanced at Noah, who stared at the horizon with a mixture of fear and hope, and at Ranger, whose nose pressed to the glass, always searching. Jack knew the next step would not be in files or barns, but in the open confrontation with the man who had erased so many lives. The trail was no longer faint. It was clear, dangerous, and headed straight into Hale's shadow. Jack Hunter drove the pickup cautiously down the highway, the rusted tin box from the red barn hidden beneath the seat. The documents inside weighed on his mind heavier than the steel that contained them. Noah sat quiet, his fingers tracing circles on Ranger's fur, the boy's face pale yet determined. They had left the old farmstead behind, but Jack knew their steps were now being measured. Hale's men would not ignore the disturbance at one of his old safe sites, not when evidence that incriminating had been unearthed. The fuel gauge dipped low, forcing Jack to make a decision. He guided the truck toward a small gas station perched at the edge of the county road, its neon sign flickering weakly against the dusk. Snow dusted the cracked pavement and the smell of diesel hung in the air. "We fill up quick and keep moving," Jack said firmly. Noah nodded, clutching Ranger's leash tighter. The station appeared quiet, only a single sedan parked to the side and no attendant visible outside. Jack scanned the lot, instincts pricking, but he stepped out with calculated calm, telling Noah to stay in the cab with Ranger. He pulled the nozzle from its holder and began fueling, his eyes sweeping the windows of the convenience store. A faint movement caught his attention, the shadow of someone lingering near the doorway. He straightened hand, brushing the holster at his hip. Before he could speak, the sedan's doors opened and two men stepped out quickly, their strides too confident to be casual customers. One was tall, with a scar along his cheek, the other stockier, both dressed in dark jackets. "Evening," the taller man said, but his hand slipped inside his coat. Jack reacted instantly, shoving the fuel nozzle back, drawing his sidearm just as the shorter man rushed toward him. Ranger exploded from the cab before Noah could hold him back, his powerful frame hitting the shorter man square in the chest, knocking him onto the icy pavement. The man shouted in surprise, arms flailing as the dog's weight pressed him down. Jack pivoted, using the distraction to sidestep the taller man's swing and drive his shoulder into him. They grappled, fists landing, boots scraping against the slick surface. Noah pressed his hands against the glass, eyes wide, his breath fogging the window as he watched his protector fight two grown men under the orange glare of the station's lights. Jack twisted free, pinned the taller man's arm behind his back, and forced him against the side of the sedan. Ranger's growl rumbled low as he held the other man immobilized on the ground, teeth close enough to make the captive freeze. "Who sent you?" Jack demanded, voice sharp. The taller man spat a laugh, refusing to answer, but the stockier man swallowed hard fear in his eyes. "We don't pick where we go," he said, voice strained with Ranger's weight on his chest. "Orders come from Hale. Always from Hale." Jack pressed harder, his storm-gray eyes unblinking. "What about Michael Carter?" Noah's head shot up inside the cab, heart pounding at the name. The man hesitated, then whispered, "He's alive." The words cut through the cold air like a blade. Jack's grip tightened and Noah's small hands trembled as he pushed the door open, stepping onto the lot despite the danger. "My dad!" he called out, voice breaking. The captive nodded once, sweat beading despite the chill. "He's held. Locked away. Hale uses him to keep everyone quiet. But listen to me, if you go looking, you're walking into a trap." The taller man cursed under his breath, but Jack shoved him harder against the car, silencing him. "Where?" Jack pressed. The stockier man shook his head. You think he leaves maps? Hale knows you're hunting him now. Every step you take, he's already laid out the next one. He wants you to chase him." His chest heaved as Ranger's teeth pressed closer. "You don't understand. No one ever comes back." Jack's jaw set. "Then we'll change that." He gestured, and Ranger released the man, though the dog's eyes never left him. Jack cuffed the taller one with zip ties from his pack, leaving the second subdued against the pavement. Noah stepped closer to Jack, his blue eyes searching. "He's alive," the boy whispered, a spark of hope flickering amid fear. Jack rested a steady hand on his shoulder. "That's what matters. But we play this smart." Jack quickly scanned their surroundings. The gas station was too exposed, headlights might sweep the lot any moment, and he knew leaving witnesses was safer than dragging them. He pulled both men to their feet, warning them coldly. "You run back to Hale and tell him we're coming. Tell him we're not afraid of his traps." The taller one sneered, but the other looked shaken eyes darting to Noah with something close to pity. They staggered back to their sedan, starting the engine with trembling hands, then vanished into the night. Jack holstered his weapon and turned to Noah. "We know the truth now," he said quietly. "Your father's alive. That changes everything." Noah hugged Ranger tightly, burying his face in the dog's fur. Jack filled the last of the tank, climbed behind the wheel, and pulled onto the road, headlights cutting through the frozen dark. Inside the cab, silence hung heavy. Noah broke it at last, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's alive, but Hale will hurt him if we get too close." Jack kept his eyes on the road. "That's why we stay ahead, why we think like Marines, not like prey. If Hale set a trap, we'll turn it into his cage." Ranger shifted, pressing his head against Noah's knee, as if pledging his loyalty once again. The boy's hand tightened on the dog's collar, and for the first time since that night in the snow, his eyes carried not just fear, but a fragile thread of faith. Jack glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "We'll bring him back," he promised. The road stretched forward, silent and dark, but no longer hopeless. They carried the weight of proof, the knowledge of life, and a bond strong enough to stand against any trap laid ahead. The road narrowed as Jack Hunter guided the truck down toward the industrial edge of town, where abandoned warehouses lined the frozen riverbank like skeletal remains of another age. He had followed the thread of evidence from the documents from the gas station confession until every path pointed here to Hale's distribution hub, a warehouse outwardly empty, yet pulsing with shadows. Noah sat in silence, his small hands resting on Ranger's back, the boy's eyes reflecting both dread and hope. Jack slowed the truck, killed the headlights, and parked among the derelict machinery at the edge of the lot. "Stay sharp," he said, voice low but steady. "This is where he wants us, but it's also where we might find what we need." Noah swallowed hard, nodding. Ranger shifted ears high, every muscle taut, as though already sensing the weight of the place. They slipped through a broken gate, boots crunching softly on ice breath, puffing clouds in the freezing night. The warehouse loomed ahead, corrugated steel walls dented and streaked with rust, its tall windows blackened. Jack led them along the side, keeping low until they reached a service door hanging on tired hinges. With a careful push, he eased it open, revealing the vast interior. Moonlight slanted through cracks, illuminating rows of crates, oil drums, and machinery under tarps. The air was heavy with the odor of dust and fuel. Jack's eyes swept every corner, his instincts alert. He gestured for Noah to stay close. Ranger moved forward first, nose to the ground, weaving between crates with a focused urgency. Jack followed, scanning with his flashlight held low. It was then that Noah spotted something lying atop a crate, half hidden under canvas. He whispered, "Jack, look." Jack pulled back the cover and froze. There lay an old military duffel, olive green, its seams frayed. On top gleamed a pair of worn dog tags, the name stamped clear in metal, Michael Carter. Noah's breath caught his knees weakening. He reached out with trembling hands, but Jack caught his wrist gently. "Not so fast," Jack said, eyes narrowing. "This is too neat." He lifted the duffel, slowly unzipping it enough to see folded uniforms, boots, and a few personal items. The placement was deliberate, as though someone wanted it found. "This is bait," Jack muttered. Noah's face twisted between hope and fear. "But it's his. It has to be." Before Jack could answer, Ranger let out a sharp bark and darted toward the far wall. The dog's claws scratched furiously at the corrugated panels near the ground, paws raking until flakes of rust scattered. Noah hurried over, kneeling beside him. "What is it, boy?" Ranger growled low, continuing to claw. Jack knelt, running his gloved hand along the wall until he felt a faint seam. He pressed harder, then found a recessed latch nearly invisible in the metal. "There's something behind here," Jack whispered. With effort, he pulled, and the panel shifted, grinding open just enough to reveal a hidden door cut into the wall. A faint draft of stale, cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of damp earth. Behind it, a narrow staircase descended into darkness. Jack's pulse quickened. He checked the duffel one last time, sliding the tags into his pocket for Noah, then focused on the hidden passage. "This is what Ranger wanted us to see," he said. Noah's eyes widened. "Dad could be down there." Jack steadied him with a firm hand. "Or it could be another snare. Either way, we don't ignore it." He drew his sidearm, tested his flashlight, and guided Noah and Ranger to the threshold. The dog leaned forward, ears pricked, body trembling with restrained energy. The silence below felt alive, heavy with the presence of something concealed too long. Step by step, they descended, the old wood creaking under their weight. The narrow stairwell opened into a basement chamber lined with stone walls. Moisture dripped from pipes above, echoing softly. Jack swept his beam across the room. Rusted chairs' chains bolted to the floor, and scraps of cloth littered the space. It was not just a basement. It had been a prison. Noah's hand clutched Jack's sleeve, his eyes wide with terror. Ranger padded slowly forward, sniffing at the ground, tail stiff. Then the beam caught something at the far end, a cot with a blanket folded neatly as if waiting for someone. Next to it stood a metal locker padlock snapped open. Inside were more personal effects: worn photos, a pocket knife, and a torn jacket with the initials MC stitched faintly at the collar. Noah whispered, "He was here." His voice shook, but a spark of certainty burned. Jack placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. Yes, he was. And maybe he still is. But his gut told him this basement was designed to lure them further in. He scanned the walls again, noting another door at the back, heavy steel, locked with fresh bolts. Ranger growled, hackles raised, standing firm before it, as though daring whatever lay behind. Jack lowered his flashlight. "We found the trail," he said quietly. "Now we follow it." He guided Noah back toward the stairwell. "We don't open this tonight, not without knowing what's behind it. But your father's closer than ever, and Hale just showed us where he hides his truths." Noah looked once more at the cot. The photos, the locker, then clutched Ranger's leash tight. The boy's voice was small but resolute. "We'll come back for him." Jack nodded. With more than just hope. With a plan. They climbed back into the warehouse, sealing the secret door behind them. The night outside waited cold and endless, but no longer blind. They carried with them proof of life and the map to Hale's last stronghold. Jack Hunter returned to the warehouse 2 nights later with Noah at his side and Ranger trotting ahead, each step heavy with purpose. The evidence of the hidden chamber had not left his mind since they discovered it. The duffel bag and the dog tags were bait, but the underground prison was real. He had spent the past 2 days preparing quietly, gathering enough food, medical supplies, and a borrowed bolt cutter from Ben Walker's diner storeroom. Noah insisted on going, his blue eyes resolute. Jack tried to dissuade him, but the boy's words carried a weight beyond his years. "If my father is alive, I need to be there when we find him." Jack relented, knowing some truths a child must see with his own eyes. The warehouse lay still under the moonlight, its steel walls glistening with frost. Jack led them through the same service door, his rifle slung flashlight steady. The air inside felt heavier than before, charged with the anticipation of what lay beneath. Ranger moved quickly toward the hidden door pause, pressing against the seam until Jack pulled it open. The draft of cold air from below washed over them, again sharp with the scent of stone and time. Jack clipped a light to his vest, motioned for Noah to stay close, and began descending the narrow stairway. Each creak echoed like a warning, but he pressed on. The chamber opened before them, unchanged yet alive with expectation. Jack approached the steel door at the back, the one bolted shut. He set the bolt cutter against the lock and pressed until the metal groaned and snapped. Ranger growled, tail stiff, ready for anything. Jack pushed the door open slowly, light spilling into the darkness beyond. What he saw froze him for a moment. Against the wall sat a man, his body thin clothes, torn beard long and unkempt. Shackles hung from his wrists, but his chest rose and fell. He was alive. Noah gasped, voice breaking into a whisper, "Dad." Michael Carter raised his head with effort, his hollow eyes blinking against the sudden light. When they focused on the boy, recognition lit them like embers fanned into flame. His lips cracked into a trembling smile. "Noah," he rasped, his voice rough with disuse. The boy rushed forward, tears streaming, Ranger bounding beside him. Jack steadied the man as Noah threw his arms around him, sobbing into his chest. Michael's frail hands rose shaky but certain, resting against his son's back. "I knew you'd come," he whispered. Ranger pressed his head into Michael's leg tail, wagging once low but insistent. The man's hand trembled over the dog's fur. "Good boy," he whispered, and for the first time in years, hope filled the air of that basement. Jack quickly cut the shackles and wrapped Michael in a spare blanket from his pack. He offered water, guiding it gently to the man's lips. Michael drank greedily, coughing, but strength flickered in his eyes. "Hale. He kept me here." Michael managed to keep Noah quiet, to keep me from speaking. Jack nodded grimly. "We know. You're safe now." But the words had barely left his mouth when footsteps thundered above. Jack's head snapped upward, instincts sharpening. Hale had returned. The floor creaked as heavy boots descended the stairs. Victor Hale emerged into the chamber, his frame broad, his coat immaculate even in the dank air. His eyes blazed cold as they locked on to the boy, clinging to his father. "So, you finally found him?" Hale sneered, voice low and deliberate. "That changes nothing. You don't walk out of here alive." He stepped forward, hand reaching for the weapon at his side. Jack raised his rifle, but Hale moved quickly, ducking behind a beam, trying to retreat back up the stairs. He knew the game was over and aimed to flee, but Ranger lunged before Hale could escape. The German shepherd slammed into him with the full force of loyalty and fury, teeth gripping Hale's arm, dragging him back down the steps. Hale roared in pain, struggling, but Ranger's weight held him firm. Jack advanced, pressing Hale to the ground, wrenching the weapon free and tossing it aside. He pinned him with a knee against his back cuffs, snapping around his wrists. "It's over, Hale," Jack said, voice calm but unyielding. "You don't touch this family again." Hale glared up. Breath ragged, but the fight drained from him as Ranger stood guard, growling low. With Hale restrained, Jack turned to Noah and Michael. The boy clung to his father's side, helping him to his feet, tears still streaking his face, but mixed now with relief. Michael leaned heavily on Jack's arm, but his steps grew steadier as they climbed the stairs. Ranger leading the way, tail raised proudly. Outside, dawn crept over the horizon, the first pale light brushing the riverbank. The air was sharp, but alive, as if the world itself acknowledged the end of Hale's reign. Jack loaded Michael gently into the truck, covering him with blankets. Noah climbed beside him, refusing to let go of his father's hand. Ranger curled at their feet, eyes soft but alert. His duty fulfilled, yet never finished. In the weeks that followed, the case unraveled publicly. Hale faced trial under federal custody, his network dismantled piece by piece. The documents from the Red Barn, the testimony of Michael Carter, and Jack's direct account left no room for escape. Hale's power dissolved, leaving behind only the wreckage of lives he had tried to erase. For Noah, the days became lighter. He walked again with his father in the town square, his hand never far from Ranger's leash. Michael, though still frail, found strength in freedom and the bond with his son. Jack stood with them often, his presence steady, no longer just a protector, but part of their lives. When the sheriff's office offered him a position, he accepted, not as a Marine this time, but as a deputy rooted in a place worth defending. At the swearing-in, Ranger stood at his side, wearing a harness with a badge stitched on it. The sheriff announced the dog as an honorary member of the team, a true partner in every sense. The crowd applauded, and Noah beamed with pride, hugging Ranger tightly. That evening, Jack visited the small home arranged for Michael and Noah. Through the window, he watched father and son set the table, laughter soft but real. Ranger sat on the porch tail, sweeping the boards, a sentinel who had seen darkness and carried his family back into light. Jack leaned against the rail, the cold air filling his lungs, and for the first time in many years, he felt peace. And that's where our story finds its rest for now. A boy, reunited with his father, a Marine who found a new mission, and a dog who proved once again that loyalty can change the course of lives. If this story spoke to you, let me know what part stayed with you the most. Was it the moment Ranger uncovered the truth in silence, or the first time Noah dared to believe his father was still alive? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also tell me, where are you listening from tonight? It's always powerful to see how far a single story can travel. If you'd like to walk with me through more stories of courage, faith, and redemption, make sure to subscribe and stay close. Every week we'll step into another night, another silence, another light breaking through.